So hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Driver, Executive Director of Independent Schools of St. Louis. So happy to have our esteemed panel together with us today. Before we get started, we'll go around and introduce yourselves. So Janelle, why don't we start with you?
Sure. My name is Janelle Harris. I am at Community School. I am the junior kindergarten teacher and the director of diversity and inclusivity.
And Jarrett.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jarrett Young. I'm the middle school director at Woodfield.
And Celeste.
Hi, my name is Celeste Prince. I am an upper school English teacher at MICDS.
Wonderful. Well, we are so grateful to you all for being here with us today. So why don't we start a little bit with having you all talk about what the main differences are really between what you have observed between independent schools and other kinds of educational options. Some of you maybe have taught in the public school world or have lived in both worlds. What do you think are some of the real differences? And Janelle, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So yeah, I started my teaching career in public school. So I do have the perspective of what's the difference with public and private. And there is some great benefits to an independent school. Class sizes are smaller. Community school has co-teaching, so there's 2 lead teachers in every classroom, which provides great opportunity for small group work and more opportunity to really get to know your students. One of the things I love is this freedom to teach to meet the needs of each individual student. We do have curriculum that we use. We do have benchmarks that we want our students to meet, but we have some wiggle room in terms of how we get them there. There's some flexibility with that. And I think that's a huge benefit of independent schools. You're not tied down to one thing. You actually can differentiate based on the needs of your students. They allow a lot of room for that. So there's many things. Those are a couple of the things that I think really stand out when it comes to working in independent schools.
Great. And Celeste, what would you add?
I used to work in a public charter school, and I have to double down on the smaller class sizes. When I first started teaching, I was 25 years old and naive. And one of my classes, my second year of teaching, was I think 32 kids. I don't know who learned anything that year. All I learned was that 32 kids is too much. So small class sizes, absolutely, so that I get a chance to better understand the kids, better understand what I need to do, and a better chance of developing a classroom culture. So that's a really big thing as far as me as a teacher that I really value. And what I also really like about working at an independent school is the ability to collaborate with teachers. So rather than teachers who have gone through this huge cookie cutter system of this is pedagogy and this is Common Core and this is what we do. Instead, I'm working with people who are constantly striving to be better in the content. So are reading books and are engaging in those kinds of conversations rather than getting tied down with the jargon that I think can mess with conversations about education, when instead of talking about the jargon, instead we're talking about the content. And so everyone I'm surrounded with is always pushing the content. And then we have people whose job is to know the educational jargon, who then come in and tell us how to add those pedagogical elements to it. So I appreciate the ability to collaborate with like-minded people about okay, what books should we change to, so on and so forth. But then having the freedom to make the changes and the choices as necessary. But at the end of the day, my job is to be strong in my content rather than getting bogged down in the day-to-day little things that can kind of make teaching more difficult.
And Jarrett, how about you?
I've never had the privilege of working at a public school, but I think about the teachers that I've hired who have come from public schools. And one of the big things I do is work to unfetter them from some of those constraints that they felt at previous places. It's like taking the governor off and really allowing for people to dive deeper and explore deeper. And for me, I love it because I'm able to have relationships with faculty around observation and professional development where I don't want to see some cookie cutter class. I want to see them taking risk to enhance their professional practice, but I also help them see the collaborative nature of how administrators and faculty members really work together to collaborate to find the best outcomes for kids. And one of the things that I found from some public school teachers that I've hired is they're like, you just sit in my room and write emails sometimes and hang out. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not evaluating you. I'm just hanging. Like, this is the culture of the school is we're all in the process of doing, and we're all educators and working alongside one another. And that's something that I'm sure some public schools do a great job of, but I really feel is a hallmark of what we do at Woodfield and what happens in independent schools that I've worked at across the country.
That's great. So you all have talked a little bit about the support and opportunities that are there for teachers, but can you talk a little bit more about that? What kinds of opportunities are there for personal and professional growth for faculty who come into our schools? Anyone like to go first?
I'll hop back in. I mean, I started as a history teacher at Worcester Academy in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I was fresh out of college. I was a dorm parent. I did a multitude of different roles, and I knew at that time I really wanted to be an administrator and was trying to find the pathways to be able to take that leap. And the thing I loved is I had wonderful experiences in being able to hone my craft, work with administrators like Rodney Glasgow, who is well known through NAS, who is the director of diversity at Worcester, and take on roles and take on responsibilities that you wouldn't necessarily look at my resume and say, I can completely see Jared doing this right now. So that chance to really dive deep in things that you're interested and passionate about, to develop more skills, whether those are enhancements in your teaching practice or things that you would like to do to further your community, those opportunities present themselves at independent schools due to budgets, but also due to the time that you have to collaborate across divisions, across disciplines, and with administrators that are in the building as well.
Janelle, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think what I think the biggest pleasant surprise when I came to working in independent schools is the professional development. Like, you had a choice of what you could do. So it was very exciting. And you could like leave the state to go do it. So that was just, I was used to going to professional development that was set aside by the school district, and everyone was taking the same, and we were learning something that I would walk away and say, I cannot apply that to that doesn't fit with my kiddos, so you weren't leaving with anything. So you would spend all day in a workshop that wasn't useful. In independent schools, you could go and learn more about things that you were interested in. It doesn't always have to necessarily be something you're teaching at that moment. Or, like if I wanted to, since I teach junior kindergarten, I don't know a whole lot about maybe Lucy Calkins, or because we don't teach it at this age, but if I wanted to, I can go and learn about it, just for your own knowledge. And there's more opportunities to do that. And I feel like independent schools are very intentional about setting aside funding for that purpose, so that teachers can go and hone in on their craft, or go and learn a new program, a new strategy that they can then bring back to the school. There's just more ability to do things that you can actually then come back to school and do, that you can apply in the classroom, or come back and share that knowledge with your colleagues. So that is a very exciting thing about independent schools. Lots of fun places to go.
Absolutely. Celeste, anything to add there about that?
I mean, definitely doubling down on all of those things. And like, I didn't realize that the opportunity of like what I could achieve was really just, it was just the extent of my imagination. So, so I got to go to Ghana after my second year at MICDS because I like, well, if I backtrack, so I showed up and I was like, I'll teach 10th grade and 11th grade, yay. And then we had an opportunity to um, go through a design thinking process to design new senior electives. And I said, I want to teach a literature of the Black diaspora class, point blank period. There's no class like this at the school. I don't know if there's a class like this anywhere else. And I want to be the one to teach it because this is the class I needed when I was in high school. So, and I didn't feel comfortable teaching it unless well, I felt comfortable teaching it, period. But I wanted to be able to also have more feeling. I wanted to know more about it. So often with English departments, the little EF tour, little cards will come out and they're like, oh, English teachers, do you want to go to England? Do you want to go to Ireland? I'm like, these are not the only places where literature has born. So I was like, okay, if we're going to teach a literature of the Black diaspora class, we need to go to Ghana. We need to go to the motherland. And I kind of hemmed and hawed and told people like, well, I think I want to go to Ghana, but like, I don't really know. And they're like, oh my God. And like my department chair like went downstairs and told, our assistant head of school, like, Celeste's writing her application, just give her a second, like, it's coming. Like, all these people came up behind me and were like, you're going to Ghana. And so, like, help me write my little application. So the point is I got to go to Ghana, period. And like, that's not, no 25-year-old Celeste did not think she'd ever be able to go to Ghana on the school's dime, ever. And so the fact that the school believed in me that much to say like, yeah, go do the thing and come back and teach the kids, it meant everything to me. And it showed like, oh, it's not just about phoning it in and say like, yes, like we'll send you to do this thing and we'll send you to a conference and those kind of things, but it's just like, where do you want to go? What are you going to do with it? Great, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And that really means a lot. So I like, again, like the opportunity, and obviously like we know it comes down to money. And the gratitude I have is that like independent schools have the ability to make those choices, to be able to say like, how much? Here's a check. And that's something you can't get everywhere. And I can't say thank you enough about it.
That's great. So I wanted to pivot for just a second and have you all talk for a minute about the relationships that you're able to develop with your parents, with your families. You touched a little bit about on getting to know your students really well because of the smaller class sizes, but can you elaborate, each of you, a little bit on that, about those relationships and then the role that the families kind of play in your work? Jared, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I mean, I sit here as a product of ISIL schools. I went to MICDS. I graduated from MICDS. I grew up in North St. Louis, and those relationships and people seeing me is the reason why I get to do what I do now. That school changed my life, and I know the power of that and invest fully in my kids, but in the families as well. In an aspiration to be an administrator, I took the higher ed route and I worked as a dean as a college. And that was not relationship building with parents. It was pretty adversarial, dealing with some of the things that would happen in supporting students in their growth and development. But also you were pulled away from parents and you were really working with the students because you're trying to develop them into young adults. But working in independent schools, I had a parent event today that we did during lunch, and I got to talk to 7th grade parents. And at one point, I was laughing because we were going back and forth talking about the relationships that we had with all their kids and how we're meaningful people in their kids' lives. And it was funny to smile because I know I've had conversations with each one of those parents, either at carpool or during admissions or over the phone, about making sure that their kid is just processing something that would happen in the hallway the right way. And that's what we do. Families expect that. I love that. That's one of the reasons why we do it. And those relationships are long lasting. So I still stay in touch with kids that I taught at Whisper Academy when I was 23 years old. And I to this day stay in touch with administrators and teachers that I had when I was at MICDS when I was 16 years old. Those relationships run deep because you really are at this critical inflection point in these young people's lives, adults for them. You're people in their lives that are holding places of reverence. And so often we can forget it as we get caught up in the day to day. But if you look at the kids, like they see you see them, and that's the magic. I love it.
Oh, that's great. Janelle?
Yeah, I echo all of that. I'm also a product of two independent schools, New City and Crossroads, who you all might see at the fair today. But it is there. I was thinking as Jared was talking about, how many conversations I've had with parents where I've taught one of their children, now they've got another one coming, and they're like, we really want you, and they try to tell you, I have no pull in what room, what side they go into, but they are always like, so, is there any way you can make sure, I want my child to be in your class again? And really it's because of the relationships that you build with the parents. Because we are smaller, you can build those relationships. You're working, it's a partnership between the school and the parents, and that's the message that's given from the very beginning. Any family that wants to bring their child to your school, it's a true partnership. And so there's lots of opportunities to get to know the parents and really understand what the goals they have for their children, and try to create these good, positive partnerships. And there's and that translates in with the kids. And I don't know how many times I've had some of our nursery students who will go home and say they want me as their teacher. I'm not really sure when we had an interaction, because I don't see them, but they, I'll have their parents stop me. It's like, oh my gosh, my child really wants to be in your class. And I'm like, I think I said hi to them one day, but I don't really remember, and it's even less now because of the way schools are. But that's that. It's such a, it's a small community, and it's that relationship building, and knowing that you can pick up the phone and call a parent, I don't have any, whether, I have questions about their kiddo or want to share something positive. It's a complete comfort level, but that's because we built this relationship and we have this trust, that we're all working together for what's best for the child. So it does, it just provides for a more united environment.
Celeste, anything to add?
I don't know if I have anything new to add, but what I like about independent schools is that I can get to know kids and their families in other ways. So even if I don't have a kid in my classroom, I might get to know them through coaching, through track, or working with them with a club. So I developed really close relationships with a lot of parents through being the newsletter coordinator for our track and field team. So I got a lot of emails from a lot of parents of oh, thank you so much for highlighting Johnny, he's working really hard. And it's just yay. I'm so glad to help. Those kind of things. And so that was always really cute. And I missed that from last year when we had to go into lockdown, because that was my in with a lot of parents, because I didn't get to do very much. But that was the highlight in the inbox of oh, the newsletter's here. I'm yeah, I can offer that. But then on top of that, just it means a lot when a family decides to we're making this choice of this is where we're sending our kid. And so I recognize that they've made a big choice to invest, literally sending their child to this school, and so I have to show up in that same kind of way. And so it's really great when that's reciprocated, whether it's parent association snacks or a gift from a family for Christmas or anything like that. It's different. It hits different. And even after they've graduated, so I had a student reach out and she's like, my mom wants to make you dinner. I'm like, of course, come over. I love that. This is my favorite part of that. Just that they don't just see me as the English teacher who gave their kid whatever, but that I'm a part of the family, and that means a lot. And it's not for every kid, obviously. It comes and goes, but for the ones that does happen with, those are the moments I don't forget.
And can I add one more thing? I mean, it's the trust factor is huge. I mean, we've been it's 2021, things are popping off, COVID is real, and we've been in person since August 27th or 26th. It's been a while. And the only reason why we've been able to do it is because we trust our parents to answer the screening honestly, to do the things that we need to do. And I had a young woman who was just tired from dance and everything that happened. But I'm like, what you're describing to me, I still need to put you in this isolation room, and I gotta call your parents. We gotta have them come get you, and you can't come to school tomorrow. You have to attend virtually. And her dad was just like, yep, I'll be right there. And knowing that I can rely on my parents to help us make school happen, especially in times of crisis. I mean, that's one reason why we're able to do what we're able to do and really serve these students the way in which we are, and help our faculty members ensure that they feel safe in the building as they're working to educate these students as well. So that parent partnership was put to the test the past two trimesters of our school year, and I'm sure in all of our school communities in a big way as well.
Absolutely. Great point. I wonder if you all could just speak for a minute about your experiences and observations with diversity, equity, inclusion within the independent schools and obviously within your schools. Can you speak to that a little bit? Jonelle, you want to kick us off?
Celeste, you can go ahead. You look like you were
I'm
just
sorry,
about to speak.
Celeste, no, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I didn't see that.
So at MICDS, we do cultural competency classes for all the staff and the faculty. So the last 2 years, oh gosh, I don't know. Okay, so I started in 2016. We started the classes in 2017. The first 2 years I was just a participant, and in the last 2 years I've been a facilitator. So it's the staff and the faculty learning from each other, which I think I really appreciate. We do have some outside facilitators who come in, but it's really meaningful, especially when we're learning from each other. So, and recognizing that not everyone gets it, and we want to be a progressive community that recognizes that every child wants to be seen and heard and understood. And the only way they can do that is if you keep learning. So if you keep learning about like gender, pronouns, what is it like to be a Muslim in our school community? How do we better serve our students? And the way we do that is better understanding their intersectional identities. So I teach a class called Just Because We're Magic Doesn't Mean We're Not Real, a Black Girl Magic Workshop. So it's about the Black girl magic experience because I am a Black girl. And I think it's important because so often while Black girls are prevalent in independent schools, they're usually not the forefront of the conversation. We usually talk about boys, we usually talk about other people, but girls usually kind of disappear into the background. And we know they're amazing, we know they're going to college, but why are we pretending that they don't exist? And the only time we talk about them is during dress code. So, so my class has been kind of trying to teach everyone about that and trying to avoid the anthropological, weird National Geographic tone that sometimes it can take if you're not careful. But that's what I really appreciate about MICDS is that what we've been doing is those cultural competency classes and really taking a step and empowering people to feel like they can be a facilitator of a class if they want to be able to teach everyone to engage in like book clubs and things like that, so that we are taking that seriously. So rather than it being like one director of diversity, we have a director of faculty equity and inclusion. And then we take the IDI. I'm so sorry that I cannot remember what the IDI stands for, and Erica is going to kill me about this, but the IDI, we took that a couple of years ago, and then we just took it this year to recalibrate and see where we're at. And this is something we're going to continue. So now people have set up their appointments to go over the results and things like that. So, and that's been a big thing that Erica Moore has been pushing at our school, and I can't thank her enough for that sweat equity that she's been putting in.
Jared?
Jonelle, you were about to do your thing. You let Celeste go. You go.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say I've been at community school, it'll be my 8th year in the fall. And in this time, I have seen the school is not the same school it was when I even came almost 8 years ago. And that is in its commitment to diversity, equity, inclusivity, and justice. just the more the conversations that we were having, the training that we are having, more to come, but just the commitment to the work. It has been, instead of it being a back burner conversation, it's at the forefront. It's what we're constantly thinking about. When whether you're talking about training for faculty, education for parents, education for students, and are we representational? Do look at our student body, look at our faculty. Does our faculty represent what we see in our students? So all of those conversations are like all the way to the front, which is very, that was in this short amount of time. I feel like that was a lot of progress. But we do have we have trainings, we have a very active and vibrant parent diversity group. Like even in this short time that I've been with them, they have grown in attendance and grown in the type of workshops that they do. They put on 2 workshops a year. We hold a all family service day for Martin Luther King. And then they end with a social event, which all of those things look very different this year. But it's been amazing to see, our service day have, 150 to 200 people to come on that day to go serve, and we go out, we don't stay here at school, to see especially this year with us having to move a lot of our workshops online, to see attendance still be like 80 families that are signing up, and people new faces, new people, new families. So that has continued to grow. And, we work, I personally work a lot with our librarian to definitely make sure the books that are in the classroom and that are in our library are representational of everyone. And we work closely together in making sure we're providing all these variety of lenses for students and teachers to expose themselves to. I mean, we are currently in the process of our AIM survey, which is the assessment of, I always forget the I. I always forget what the I means. Either way, but it's an assessment of multiculturalism. So we're looking to see where we are as a school. Are we inclusive? Do people feel that way? And that survey is done by, you do it every 7 years, and it gives you an idea of where you are as a school. And then we use that information to guide where we're going to go next. So we are in the process of doing that now. A lot of amazing things came out of our last survey, like a lot of changes, a lot of shifting, a lot of changes in language in some of our forms and documents, the diversity statement, all of that. So, but that's what you have to do. You have to constantly kind of, to go echo what Celeste was saying, you constantly have to do the work to see where we are. Because there's always work to be done. Where are we? See where we are as a school. Where is the faculty? And then let's decide what we need to do next, so that we're always providing what our students need and what our faculty needs to continue moving the needle forward. And then I think, and we're also really re-looking at curriculum. That goes back to the great things about being an independent school. Let's look at our curriculum. I don't have to stick to what the state says. So we're able to look at our curriculum. It's like, are we incorporating social justice into everything that we're doing? Is our science, our science, technology, engineering, and arts and math, does everyone in that look the same? Or so it's just really looking into all of those pieces and making sure that is also aligned with who we are and who we want to be as a school community. So there's lots, we've got a lot of work to do, but what's very impressive to me is the commitment the school has, from the head of school administrators to the board, to doing this work and making it the forefront of conversation.
I agree with you all 100%. I mean, all these independent schools across the nation, they're so different. There's such a diversity amongst our schools. And one of the things that helped me realize that Whitfield was the place for me is, as I went on my interview and I stood at assembly and I saw everyone in the room, I saw so much diversity, like the numbers that were there and the students that were there really mirrored the St. Louis that I saw and that I grew up in. And the diversity that was there allowed for diversity of those experiences. Like there's so many Black experiences at Whitfield, and people have the ability to not necessarily be told what that Black experience should be because there's only 1 or 2 or 3 Black students in a grade or in a classroom. So the numbers that we have really allow for us to do a deep dive and to really partner with our students and to partner with the board and parents and faculty to really take an introspective look at who we are as a community and what we want to do and who we want to be. And part of that work we've done time and time again as we've looked at our habits of mind and heart. Cultural competence is one of the 7 that is crucial to who we are and how we evaluate college prep through character education. But we also last year in the diversity task force that's at the board level really thought about how do we do this, but do it in a data-driven way and do it in a way that's going to allow for us to compare ourselves to other schools across the nation that we also feel are doing this work well. So luckily that time I had working with Rodney Glasgow at Worcester Academy, we are still good friends to this day, and had this opportunity to use his consultancy group to come in and help us frame out what our kind of climate survey, for lack of a better term, is going to look like for our community. And we did that. We surveyed the board, parents, students, alums, teachers, administrators. And from that data that we helped craft the questions with the consultancy firm, we really got a strong sense of where our strengths were, but also where our areas of growth were. And it wasn't just a look at academics. It was a look at academics. It was a look at culture. It was a look at the climate. It was a look at what our theater productions looked like. It was a look at what our athletic teams looked like and how people felt as far as equity and inclusion within those arenas as well. And even looking at how we're serving our students in the various learning styles that we have in our community too. The topic, it can be so broad that you really have to work to define what it's going to mean and what it looks like for your community and constantly look to grow it. So you're really serving the students that you want to have, but you also really need to be clear about what you want to be as an institution and what those lines in the sands are. Because if you're going to do diversity and equity and inclusion work correctly, there are some things that are non-negotiables for what standards are going to exist in your community, and you have to be clear with those. And I feel as if our institution is doing a better job at that every single day, but it's a work in progress because it's like the Harkness table, that table where you have seminar conversations and the dinner table, those conversations don't always look the same. And the diversity of our families coming from North County, North St. Louis, Arnold, Union, Missouri, St. Charles, Clayton, Ladue, those dinner tables all look drastically different and all have different realities, especially with the news sources that we have in existence, or I should say media sources that we have in existence in America. So it's incredibly complicated work, but it's the work of a school. And I love that we can do it in an independent school because structurally, especially in this city, we've been divided along racial lines, along lines of wealth, strategically, systematically, and systemically. And our schools are pretty much the only places where we can do this work in a real meaningful collective way, where we're bringing people from various zip codes together and approaching it from equal status contact, as opposed to just approaching it, let's go help people. So I'm hoping independent schools of St. Louis and independent schools across the nation can be the place where the change can really start, but we have to keep doing the work and we can't get comfortable. It just doesn't work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you all for sharing that. And so just one last question before we wrap up today. Any words of advice that you would give to candidates who are attending the job fair, thinking about coming to an independent school, maybe interviewing, hopefully with some of your schools? Any words of advice you'd pass on? I'll let you all choose who goes first.
Hey, so often I talk to prospective faculty members who have public school teaching experience, and they're really quick to talk to me about their certification. And I don't really care about someone's certification. I care about, can you connect with kids? Do you have a sound academic background? do you have the ability to teach the things I need you to teach? So if you were a history major and you've been working and doing something else, but teaching social studies is your passion, think about the coursework that you've done. Think about the coursework in places where you have levels of expertise, and use those to be able to differentiate yourself and define experiences that you feel like you can bring to these communities. I mean, there's so much versatility that I look for as I'm looking through applications, because what people don't know is as I'm looking for an app, I'm also thinking about, man, I have a section of Spanish I could fill too. Like, could this person do more than one thing? So don't limit yourself by thinking about certifications. Think about yourself as a whole person, as a whole scholar, as a whole educator, and really start to suss out. Even in my resume, I would talk about, I was a history major. Here are my courses of study that I took. Here are the places where I feel as if I could teach these things. So I ended up teaching social psychology when I was at the Blake School in Minneapolis, and I was a history major because I have background in my coursework from higher ed that I could utilize to teach that course. So it's thinking about yourself more broadly. That's the biggest thing I would recommend.
I think another great thing for everyone to remember is that not every independent school is the same. We all beat to our own drum. And so while you are also looking for a job, you also are looking for something that's a good fit for you, that aligns well with who you are. They're all fantastic schools, but they have their own culture, and they're all different. So as you're, as you're looking and answering our questions, the questions of the people that will be there, have some questions for the people that you're talking to. Have some questions for us, and about who we are, and because you want to find something that's a good fit, because we are smaller, classroom size are smaller, school size are smaller. You are working closely with all of the people, around you, and you want to make sure that it just aligns with what you value, what you think is important. So definitely check everyone out, check out their websites, look at, get as much information as you can, and come and ask lots of questions, so that you can really get a good understanding of who the school is, and to see if it's something that works for you. And I just second everything Jared said. Like, really, I feel the same way. They always share the certifications, and I get that, because as a person who worked in public school, that's what is all about, your certifications. But what is something there could be something that you have also studied or passionate about, that you've taught or done workshops on. Share that too, because we're always like, oh, wait a minute, this person has done a workshop in XYZ, we could use that. In this area. You never know. Independent schools, we all wear many hats. You're the classroom teacher, you're the coach, you're the XYZ, you're doing this after school program. So think about that, because those things are just as important as your education and other qualifications.
I don't know if I have like too much more to add. I was going to mention, like, there are many hats in an independent school, so like, how else can you make yourself useful? So like, I remember emphasizing in my interview, just like, they're like, oh, well, like, what have you done in the past? And I was like, well, I ran track, and I've always wanted to coach track. They're like, oh, we need a woman. I was like, that's me. So that I mean, the athletic director was like, I'm the least important person you're going to talk to today. I'm like, but this may have solidified my movement and the goal. But I think one thing would be to think about, be honest with yourself about, if you're a teacher, like, is that what you want to stay in? Do you want to stay in the classroom, or do you have interest in moving up? Because some schools have the ability for you to move up, and some schools don't. Some schools will usually internally hire, so suddenly a teacher goes from the teacher to a department chair to a dean to assistant head of school, so on and so forth. But some schools don't do that. Some schools are, they they go far and wide to get their higher up positions. So if like, being honest with yourself, do you want to be a teacher? Do you want to be a staff member? Or do you want to be an administrator? And some people can't do it all. Like some people, like at our school, like if you're an administrator, you're expected to teach at least once. But some people are better administrators than they are teachers, and some people are better teachers than they are administrators. And you got to know yourself if you want to know that. I think, and like, I think in a lot of schools, there's this idea, or like not a lot of schools, I don't know if that's true. Let me not say fact. I'm an English teacher, so evidence is really important. But so I know that in some ways, sometimes people treat schools like a corporate office. Like you come in entry level, and like teaching is the entry level, which is just offensive to me, to be honest with you. But some people think of it like, oh, I teach first and then I run the school. And it's just like, okay, boo. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you become department chair, maybe you stay in the classroom for 20 years. And there's no shame or blame in either of those choices, but be honest with yourself about like, what do you want to do? Like, are you in the classroom? Are you behind the scenes? Are you working in alumni development? Do you want to work in the business off? Like, what do you want to do? And how high do you want to go? Or like, in terms of power, because like I've got a lot of power in my classroom. I don't have a lot of power as far as like whether the school is going to open like full time after spring break. That's not my power, but my power is my 16 students who are taking this quiz tomorrow for sure. So being honest with yourself about what kind of power in a school do you want to have, and voicing that immediately as soon as you know, like, I want to be here. The right people will find a way to do it, but some schools don't have those opportunities. And so being honest with yourself about, if I work here, is there movement to grow, or am I going to have to grow out of my pot and go to a different one? And that's the reality. But it's something to know about yourself. I, for one, am going to probably stay in my classroom until I die, but it is what it is.
Well, and your students are the luckier for it. But we have come to the end of our time together. I can't thank you all enough for participating in this wonderful panel. And I know that you provided many words of wisdom for our candidates who are looking at our schools.